The first time I met General Patton, he told me that if I wrote anything that demoralized his troops, he'd personally shoot me and leave my body in a ditch somewhere in France. I believed him. Name's Jack Sullivan, war correspondent for the Chicago Tribune. I covered Patton's Third Army from Normandy to Czechoslovakia. Wrote dispatches about the great armored advance, the liberation of Europe, American military might crushing the Nazi war machine, hero stories, victory stories, the kind of stories people back home wanted to read, but those weren't the real stories. The real stories never made it past the census. I grew up in Chicago, South Side, working-class Irish family. My old man was a cop, wanted me to be a cop too. But I wanted to write. Got a job at the Tribune in '38, started as a copy boy, worked my way up to reporter, covered crime, politics, city hall corruption, thought I was pretty hot shit. Then the war started and suddenly crime in Chicago didn't seem very important anymore. Every reporter worth a damn wanted to be a war correspondent, wanted to be Ernie Pyle, wanted to be Edward R. Murrow, wanted to tell the story of the greatest conflict in human history. I pulled strings, called in favors, pestered my editor until he finally got me accredited. December '43, I was on a ship to England with a typewriter, a camera, and absolutely no idea what I was getting myself into. They gave us a 2-week orientation. Military protocol, censorship rules, how to wear a uniform, how not to get killed. That last part was pretty simple. Stay behind the lines, don't do anything stupid, and remember you're a civilian. You're not a soldier, you're an observer. You're there to write, not to fight. I met Patton in July '44, right after the breakout from Normandy. Third Army was about to become operational, and the Army had assigned a few correspondents to cover them. I was one of the lucky ones. Patton was exactly what you'd expect. Tall, ramrod straight, ivory-handled pistols on his hips, steel in his eyes. He gathered us correspondents together and gave us his rules. Write what you see. Tell the truth about the fighting. But don't you dare write anything that helps the enemy or hurts morale. Do that, and I'll have you sent home. Or worse. Then he smiled, this cold, shark-like smile, and said, "Gentlemen, you're about to witness the greatest military campaign in history. Try to keep up." We tried. God, we tried. Following Patton's army was like chasing a hurricane. They didn't advance. They exploded across France, 20 miles a day, 30, sometimes 50, towns falling faster than we could count them. German units surrounded, destroyed, scattered. It was blitzkrieg in reverse, and I had a front row seat. I wrote glowing dispatches. Patton's juggernaut rolls on. Third Army smashes German resistance. Americans liberate another French town. The editors loved it. The readers loved it. Everyone back home eating breakfast and reading about how we were winning the war, how our boys were heroes, how victory was inevitable. And it was all true, every word of it. But it wasn't the whole truth. The Third Army broke out of Normandy on August 1st, 1944. I was embedded with the 4th Armored Division, riding in a Jeep with my driver, a kid from Ohio named Kowalski, and my photographer, Sam Levine from Brooklyn. Sam was older than me, maybe 40, had covered the Spanish Civil War, knew what real combat looked like. "Stay close to the tanks, but not too close," he told me that first day. Close enough to see, far enough to run. We followed the armor columns through the French countryside, beautiful country, rolling hills, stone villages, farmland that had been there since medieval times. Except now it was torn up by tank treads, cratered by artillery, littered with destroyed vehicles and dead Germans. The speed was insane. Patton didn't believe in consolidating gains or securing flanks or any of that cautious military doctrine. He believed in momentum. Keep moving, keep hitting, keep the enemy off balance. If you stopped, you gave them time to organize, to dig in, to counterattack. So we didn't stop. Just rolled through France like a steel avalanche. I wrote about liberation, about French villagers lining the streets, throwing flowers, offering wine, kissing American soldiers. That all happened. I saw it with my own eyes. Old men crying, young women dancing, children running alongside the tanks. The joy was real. What I didn't write about was what came after. The collaborators dragged from their homes and beaten in the streets. Women who'd slept with Germans getting their heads shaved, stripped naked, paraded through town while crowds spat on them. The summary executions in alleyways. Couldn't write that. Censors wouldn't allow it. And even if they had, the readers didn't want to hear it. They wanted heroes and villains, good guys and bad guys. They didn't want complicated moral questions about mob justice and revenge. We reached the Seine in August. Patton was furious. Eisenhower had given Montgomery priority on supplies and fuel, slowing Third Army to a crawl. Patton called it criminal, called it cowardice, nearly got himself relieved over it. I was there when he addressed his officers. "We're not stopping," he said. "We're going all the way to Berlin. And if they don't give us the gas to get there, we'll walk, we'll crawl. But we're not stopping." The officers cheered. The enlisted men cheered. Everyone believed him, believed we'd be in Berlin by Christmas. I interviewed soldiers during the lulls, tank crews, infantry, combat engineers. Asked them about the fighting, about morale, about home. Most gave me the standard lines: fighting for freedom, doing their duty, can't wait to get back to their girl. But some, late at night when we were sharing cigarettes and nobody official was listening, they'd tell the truth about being scared, about watching friends die, about killing German soldiers who were just kids, just conscripts who didn't want to be there any more than we did. I wrote down those conversations in my notebook, filed them away, never sent them to the Tribune. Some truths were too true. We hit Metz in September. The city was supposed to fall quickly. Third Army had taken everything else quickly. But Metz was different. Ancient fortresses, prepared defenses, German troops who'd been ordered to hold at all costs. The battle lasted 3 months. 3 months of grinding urban combat, artillery duels, infantry attacks that gained yards and cost lives. I watched the Third Army, this unstoppable force that had raced across France, get bogged down in brutal house-to-house fighting. I was there when they took Fort Driant, massive fortress on a hill overlooking the city. The 5th Infantry Division assaulted it for days, taking horrific casualties. I followed them in after it fell. The fort was a charnel house, bodies everywhere, American, German, impossible to tell them apart after the artillery had worked them over. The smell was unbelievable. Cordite and blood and decay and human waste, all mixing together in confined underground spaces. I saw a room where a German machine gun had caught a squad of Americans in a corridor. Just mowed them down. They were still there, piled on top of each other, frozen in the positions they'd died in. One kid, couldn't have been more than 19, was reaching for a grenade on his belt. Never got to throw it. I took notes. Sam took pictures. We filed our stories about American heroism and German fanaticism, about the indomitable spirit of our troops, about another fortress fallen, another victory notched. We didn't write about the American lieutenant who'd shot himself in the head rather than lead another assault. Didn't write about the soldiers who'd started calling Metz the meat grinder. Didn't write about the replacements arriving daily to fill gaps in the ranks, these fresh-faced kids who'd be dead or wounded within a week. In December, the Germans counterattacked in the Ardennes, the Bulge. Patton wheeled his entire army 90 degrees north in 48 hours and drove to relieve Bastogne. Military historians call it one of the greatest maneuvers in warfare history. I was there for the relief of Bastogne. Wrote about the 4th Armored Division breaking through, about the 101st Airborne holding against all odds, about American grit and determination. What I saw was frozen bodies, thousands of them. Americans killed in the initial German assault, left where they fell because nobody had time to collect them. They'd frozen solid in the snow, preserved like statues, still holding their weapons, eyes open. We drove past them for miles, an entire army of ice statues marking the route north. I saw one American soldier who'd been hit by artillery while running. The blast had caught him mid-stride and thrown him maybe 20 feet. He'd frozen in the air, suspended in this twisted position, one leg forward, arms outstretched, like he was still running. Sam wanted to photograph it. I stopped him. Some images don't need to exist. We relieved Bastogne on December 26th. The headlines back home called it a Christmas miracle. It wasn't a miracle. It was just men dying in the snow. We crossed into Germany in March 45, the Rhine crossing. Engineers built pontoon bridges while artillery pounded the far shore. Third Army poured across. Tanks, trucks, troops, thousands of vehicles, an endless steel river. The mood changed once we crossed that river. We weren't liberating anymore. We were invading. And the Germans, even the ones who knew they'd lost, fought harder. This was their home now, their cities, their families. I watched American tanks shell German towns into rubble, watched artillery flatten villages, watched infantry clear houses room by room, throwing grenades first, shooting anything that moved, asking questions never. The rules of engagement were different in Germany, more brutal, less mercy. Everyone had heard about the concentration camps by then, rumors filtering back, stories from other units. And the soldiers, they wanted payback. I was with a rifle company when they found a Hitler Youth unit defending a bridge. Kids, 15, 16 years old in oversized uniforms holding Panzerfausts with shaking hands. They fought anyway, died anyway. The Americans mowed them down and kept moving. I wrote about fanatical Nazi resistance, about German troops fighting to the last man, made it sound noble in a twisted way, made it sound like they believed in something. They didn't believe in anything. They were just scared kids who'd been given guns and told to die for a regime that had already abandoned them. In April, we found one of the camps, Ohrdruf, subcamp of Buchenwald. Patton ordered every soldier who could be spared to march through it. Ordered nearby German civilians to see what their government had done. I went through with the soldiers. Sam took pictures. We both threw up. I'd seen death, seen combat casualties, shelling victims, bodies in every state of destruction. But this was different. This was systematic, industrial. This was murder on a scale I couldn't comprehend. I wrote about it, filed my dispatch. For once, the censors let everything through. For once, the editors wanted the whole truth. America needed to see what we'd been fighting against. The story ran front page. Sam's photographs shocked the nation. We got letters from readers who said we'd made it up, that it couldn't be real, that no civilized nation could do such things. Those letters made me angrier than anything I'd seen in combat. We pushed deeper into Germany. By late April, we were in Czechoslovakia. The end was coming. Everyone could feel it. Hitler was dead. Berlin was falling. German units were surrendering by the thousands. But people were still dying. American soldiers getting killed in skirmishes and ambushes and firefights that meant nothing because the war was already over. I watched a kid from Pennsylvania, 20 years old, had survived Normandy, France, the Bulge, the Rhine crossing, get killed by a sniper 3 days before Germany surrendered. 3 days. He was 3 days from going home. I didn't write about him. What was the point? Nobody wanted to read about meaningless deaths in a war we'd already won. But I thought about him. Still do. VE Day was May 8th, 1945. Victory in Europe. The war was over. Soldiers celebrated. Officers made speeches. Patton talked about continuing east to fight the Soviets. He was serious about it, too, the crazy bastard. I sat in my tent and tried to write something meaningful, something profound about victory and sacrifice and the cost of freedom, the great think piece that would win me a Pulitzer. I couldn't. Every time I started, I saw that kid frozen mid-stride, saw the machine-gunned Americans in Fort Driant, saw the camp, saw all the things I'd witnessed and couldn't write about because the truth was too ugly, too complicated, too real. Sam found me that night, drunk on liberated German schnapps, my typewriter sitting unused on the table. "You okay?" he asked. "I lied," I said. "For 11 months I lied. Every dispatch, every story, every headline. I lied." "You reported what you were allowed to report," Sam said. "That's not lying. It's not the truth either." He sat down, lit a cigarette. "You want to know what I learned in Spain? There's the truth, and then there's what people need to hear. Sometimes they're the same thing. Usually they're not. That doesn't make it right." "No," he agreed. "But it kept morale up. Kept people buying war bonds. Kept the folks back home believing their sons were dying for something that mattered." "Were they?" I asked. "Did it matter?" Sam didn't answer. What could he say? We stayed in Germany through June, occupation duty, writing stories about rebuilding, about democracy replacing fascism, about America's benevolent role in creating a new Europe. All the optimistic bullshit people wanted to read. I interviewed more soldiers, guys who'd fought across France and Germany and were now waiting to ship out, asked them if it was worth it. Most said yes. Said they'd killed evil, saved lives, done their duty. And maybe they were right. Maybe stopping Hitler, ending the Holocaust, freeing Europe, maybe that was worth every American life lost. But the guys who'd been there longest, who'd seen the most, who'd crossed the Rhine and walked through the camps and watched friends die for nothing 3 days before the war ended, they didn't answer. They just looked at me with these hollow eyes that had seen too much. I recognized that look, saw it every time I looked in a mirror. I came home in August 1945, big homecoming party at the Tribune. Everyone congratulating me on my coverage, on my Pulitzer nomination, on my book deal. War Correspondent returns victorious, ready to tell America the story of its greatest generation. I lasted 3 months, couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't write cheerful features and human interest stories and pretend Chicago politics mattered after what I'd seen. I quit the Tribune in November. My editor thought I was crazy. Maybe I was. I'd spent 11 months following Patton's army. 11 months watching men die. 11 months writing half-truths and calling it journalism. I was done lying. I never wrote my book. The publisher sued me for breach of contract. Didn't care. What was I going to write? The sanitized version America wanted, or the truth that nobody wanted to hear? I bounced around for a few years. Tried freelancing. Wrote some pieces for magazines. Nothing substantial. Drank too much. Slept too little. Saw that frozen soldier every time I closed my eyes. Got married in 48 to a woman who thought she could fix me. She tried. God knows she tried. But how do you fix someone who's seen what I saw? Who spent 11 months lying to America because the truth was too terrible? We had a son. I wasn't much of a father. Hard to read bedtime stories when your head's still in Germany, still in the camps, still watching that kid from Pennsylvania die for nothing 3 days before it ended. The marriage lasted 5 years. Can't blame her for leaving. She deserved better than a washed-up drunk who couldn't hold down a job and woke up screaming about bodies frozen in the snow. I tried to write the truth. Started a dozen times. Sat down with my typewriter and all my old notebooks, the ones with the real stories, the ones I never filed. The collaborators beaten in the streets. The American who shot himself rather than attack Fort Driant again. The Hitler Youth kids we killed. The meaningless deaths. All of it. Couldn't do it. Every time I started, I'd see Patton's face, hear him saying, "Don't write anything that demoralizes the troops." Hear Sam saying, "There's the truth, and then there's what people need to hear." Maybe he was right. Maybe America needed the hero stories, needed to believe their sons died gloriously, fighting pure evil, making the world safe for democracy. Maybe the truth, that war is just organized murder, that young men die in the mud for inches of ground that don't matter, that we committed atrocities too, even if ours were smaller. Maybe that truth would have broken something essential. Or maybe I'm just a coward. Maybe I should have written it all down, published it, let the chips fall. Let America see what victory really cost. I'm 52 now, working as a copy editor at a small paper in Wisconsin, anonymous work. Nobody knows I covered the war. Nobody knows I followed Patton across Europe. Nobody knows my name was on the front page 11 months running. That's fine. I don't want to be known for those stories. They were lies. Beautiful, necessary, unforgivable lies. Sometimes I see other war correspondents on TV. Ernie Pyle died, killed in the Pacific, died doing the job. Everyone else seems fine, successful, well-adjusted. They wrote books, gave lectures, became famous telling war stories at cocktail parties. Maybe they're better liars than I am. Or maybe they actually believe the stories we told. I don't believe them. I was there. I saw the truth. And the truth is that I spent 11 months watching men die and wrote about glory instead. Watched suffering and wrote about heroism. Watched horror and wrote about victory. The Tribune published my dispatches in a bound collection in '46. Sullivan's War, Following Patton to Victory. Bestseller. Still in print, I think. I've never read it. Can't. Every word in that book is a lie, and I'm the one who told them. The first time I met Patton, he threatened to shoot me if I demoralized his troops. I should have let him. Would have been more honest than what I did instead. I didn't die in Germany. But the person I was, the idealistic kid from Chicago who wanted to tell important stories, who believed in truth and journalism and doing right, he died there. Somewhere between the Seine and the Rhine, between the liberation and the camps, between the lies I wrote and the truths I couldn't. What came back wasn't a journalist. Wasn't even really a person, just a ghost with a typewriter, haunted by all the stories he never told. Still haunted, still silent, still writing lies, even now, even to myself.